So I want you to imagine stepping out of your cabin. You're out in the crisp woods of northern Michigan,
Oh, sounds nice.
right? And it's dead quiet. I mean, like unnervingly quiet. But it's the kind of quiet that you've engineered perfectly because you've attached these massive pipes to the mufflers of your generators.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you feel entirely secure. You're completely safe from this viral apocalypse that's, ravaging the cities like 200 miles away.
Right. You're off the grid.
Exactly. And then completely without warning, a minivan just tears right through your perimeter.
Oh, man. I mean, that is just the ultimate nightmare scenario, right? And the crazy thing is, this was built entirely inside a sleeping mind.
Yes. So today we are doing a deep dive directly into the notes sent to us by one of their listeners, Joseph's.
Yeah, this one is wild.
It really is. He sent us this incredibly cinematic, hyper-detailed narrative of a dream he had. And it's all about surviving on his actual off-grid property. Honestly, I've been obsessing over this all week.
Same here. I mean, usually dreams are, they're fuzzy. You're suddenly late for a math test and you're in your underwear or something.
Right, you're trying to run, but your legs don't work.
Exactly. But Joseph constructed this high-resolution, totally tactical microsociety.
Yeah,
And we're going to explore what happens when that absolute tactical paranoia, collides with extreme human vulnerability.
because the level of operational architecture that his subconscious built here is just staggering.
It really is.
He didn't just imagine a post-apocalyptic aesthetic. He engineered a fully functioning society. I mean, he codified shift changes.
Yep.
He calculated sound radiuses. He balanced the psychological weight of every single life or death decision.
Well, and that kind of world building doesn't just come out of nowhere.
No, definitely not.
We have to look at how he positioned his own backstory in this dream. So Joseph establishes himself as a history buff.
Right.
And not just someone who casually watches history documentaries on a Sunday afternoon. He's someone who consumes world-renowned historians and really views human existence as this series of repeating patterns.
Yeah, and that historical lens completely frames how the collapse actually happens in his narrative.
Right.
Because the apocalypse doesn't kick off with, cinematic hordes of zombies biting people on live television.
No, it's way more insidious than that.
Yeah, it begins with government media blackouts. The internet just goes dark. And the authorities mask it as terrorist attacks on infrastructure.
Just to control the narrative.
Exactly, to prevent panic. And because Joseph recognizes that historical pattern of a failing state, his intuition just goes into overdrive.
Right, because he's seen this before in the history books.
Yeah, so every time world events look even a little suspicious, he packs up his truck, he takes his friends and his family on these quote-unquote spontaneous camping trips to his secluded Lumbertown property.
Which is just fascinating.
And most of the time, there were false alarms. I mean, it is the ultimate boy who cried wolf scenario.
Well, the psychological friction there is just so interesting. He's basically buying a new fire extinguisher every single time he smells even a faint whiff of smoke.
Yeah, imagine being his family.
Right. His friends and family likely thought he was just spiraling into total paranoia, dragging them on these disruptive, intense trips to the woods.
Over and over again.
Exactly. Right up until the world actually caught fire.
And once the fire starts, you realize the location he chose is brilliant. It's a dead lumber town over 200 miles away from major populations.
And in his dream, the undead wanderers, they do exist, but they're clumsy and they're rare out in the deep woods.
Yeah, so by removing the dead from the equation, his subconscious amplifies a far more terrifying threat.
Desperate living humans.
Yes, desperate living humans. Which brings us to this psychological concept he explicitly noted in his dream narrative, which is natural selection.
Right, yeah.
He views the viral outbreak as this earthly cleanse.
Which is a really intense way to look at it.
It is. It represents this stance of pragmatic detachment. After studying plagues and historical disasters, he just accepts the New World Order.
He's not trying to save humanity.
No, he is simply trying to break the historical cycle of suffering for his specific trusted group of about 10 to 12 people.
But that intense preparation, that cold pragmatism, it gets put to the absolute ultimate test when their perimeter is breached.
Oh man, this part of the narrative is so tense.
Yeah, so it's dusk, the camp is settling down, the wind is dying down, and suddenly that minivan just pulls right into the front yard of the main cabin.
Which is a total failure of a security system that normally operates like clockwork.
Exactly. People are inside this van. Two hostile adults, Derek and Sarah, they jump out with weapons drawn and they immediately force Joseph and his men into a large screen tent.
So they are in a standoff. Reaction here in the dream is chilling. I mean, Joseph, he makes eye contact with Paul, who is one of his most trusted, muscular guys in the camp.
Right.
And they don't speak a word. They just lock eyes, draw their weapons simultaneously, and shoot Derek and Sarah dead.
Just instant execution.
Yeah, and I have to push back on this a little bit, though, because dream narrative, right?
Right, it's his subconscious.
Why did his mind jump straight? Like in movies, this is the scene where the long tension happens. Was there for diplomacy?
Well, see, the lack of diplomacy is actually a realistic psychological element of this whole encounter.
Really?
Yeah, it comes down to what he termed his internal trust scale. He explicitly states in his notes that he survives by breaking the ancient pattern of pillaging.
Oh, I see.
So when Derek and Sarah step out of that van with guns drawn, they are immediately reenacting the oldest, most destructive human pattern.
They essentially become the marauders from every fallen empire in history.
Precisely. And to protect his microsociety, he has to end that pattern the absolute millisecond it appears. I mean, negotiation implies a shared social contract.
Right.
In this dream, that contract has completely evaporated. It's a binary choice. It's his group survival or theirs.
And his instinct turned out to be terrifyingly accurate, because after the execution, they discovered two weeping children in the back of the minivan.
Yeah. Jacob, who is 11, who is 9.
And the children's backstory instantly validates that ruthless decision he made. Derek and Sarah were not their parents.
No, they were opportunistic scavengers. They found Jacob and Natalie alone after their real parents failed to come home, ate the kids' food, kidnapped them, and were actively planning to sell them to other groups.
Which is just unimaginably dark.
Truly.
So suddenly the camp is dealing with a massive aftermath. You have bodies in the screen tent, you have two traumatized kids, and you have the horrifying realization that your flawless security perimeter somehow has a leak.
This triggers an immediate, hyper-detailed assessment of the camp's logistics. The dream shifts from violent action into this operational breakdown of how the society functions.
Honestly, this might be my favorite part of the entire deep dive. Because the camp isn't just a bunch of tents clustered around a fire pit, it is a fortified network. He has numbered patrol stations like Station 6, and they use those over the radio instead of names or landmarks.
Right, so anyone listening in can't map their defenses.
Exactly. And the shift changes are executed simultaneously across all stations. A single area is never left unguarded, even for like 30 seconds during a handover.
He essentially built a nuclear submarine in the woods.
That is the perfect analogy.
Think about how a sub operates. A stealth vessel where one tiny or, one loud dropped wrench sinks the entire ship.
Yes.
In his camp, a single light leak or an unmuscled generator could draw in violent scavengers and sink the whole society.
The submarine analogy is so perfect because their power grid is designed entirely around stealth. Like, the camp uses solar panels to charge batteries for low-energy LED lights.
Right.
But pumping deep well water requires heavy gas propane generators, which are notoriously loud.
Super loud. You can hear those for miles in the woods.
Exactly. So the group attached large pipes to the generator mufflers to cut the sound pollution. But they didn't just guess that it worked. They actually sent men out toward the main roads to physically measure how far the sound radius traveled through the forest.
That is wild.
I know. Mapping your own sound radius in a dream is just an astonishing level of subconscious detail.
It really shows how his mind is attempting to exert control over chaos. By quantifying the sound, he is physically mapping the boundaries of his safety.
Right.
And that control extends to extreme light discipline, too. Susan, who is this maternal figure in the camp, she's militant about avoiding artificial light.
Yeah, she teaches the group to rely almost entirely on the moon. She explains how artificial light ruins night vision, so the moon becomes their primary light source, their clock, and their weather indicator for incoming storms.
It's all so incredibly dialed in, but the anxiety over light and sound really culminates in their radio protocol.
Oh, the R&R protocol?
Yeah. The burden of leadership in a lawless world means calculating risk versus reward for every single tiny action, and he literally codified this.
Yes. I love this detail. If a guard on patrol spots a deer and wants to take a shot, they can't just pull the trigger. They have to get on the short-range CB radio, which they're already super paranoid about being hacked.
Right.
And they have to request an R&R report. Every to radio back a clear signal before the hiker takes the shot. I mean, one guy, Davis, spots a deer, and they run this entire intricate camp-wide security check just to authorize a single loud noise.
It perfectly illustrates the suffocating tension of this existence.
It really does.
Every action, no matter how necessary for survival, carries a potentially fatal consequence. You literally need committee consensus just to...
But, if the dream only focused on mufflers and radio protocols, it would just...
Yeah, it would be a bit dry.
Right. The real emotional weight of this narrative lies in the extreme human vulnerability that exists right alongside all that paranoia.
Well, because survival loses its meaning without the tender necessities of the human element, the subconscious has to build a reason to survive.
And we see this instantly with Susan and the kids. She brings these terrified children into the warm cabin and just completely disarms their terror.
She feeds them venison stew.
Yeah, and she carefully cuts little Natalie's unkept hair so she isn't sleeping with a wet head in a cold van.
It's so sweet.
And then the next morning, the camp quartermasters, George and Carol, step in.
Oh, Carol, who insists on using a vintage washboard to clean clothes rather than relying on like a digital main tag.
I just love that detail so much. I mean, why does a brain in the middle of dreaming about this high-tech paranoid survival camp invent a vintage washboard?
Well, notice how the subconscious specifically selects these analog, deeply domestic details.
Yeah.
The washboard, giving a child a haircut, serving blueberry pancakes and maple sausage. The dreamer isn't just seeking physical safety.
No.
The brain is actively trying to reconstruct this analog, pre-industrial innocence to contrast the brutal, high-tech paranoia of
Makes total sense.
manual, rhythmic labor. Like using a washboard, it's grounding, it's a psychological anchor.
And George and Terrell even give Natalie a handmade cloth doll. It's like this pocket of absolute peace in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah.
But the most profound example of this vulnerability is the emotional climax of the dream between Joseph and Paul.
Right. So Paul is the large, muscular man that the group rescued from a looted hardware store earlier in the timeline.
Yeah.
And he had been intentionally avoiding deep connections within the camp because he is absolutely terrified of the pain of losing people.
Which is understandable. So later that night, the adrenaline from executing the kidnappers finally wears off. And Joseph and Paul are walking on this dark trail back to Paul's log cabin.
Right.
The crickets and bullfrogs are just roaring. And this massive stoic guy just stops on the path and completely breaks down crying in the moonlight. He admits he hates killing people. The trauma just swells him.
And Joseph's reaction as a leader here is critical. He doesn't offer like a tactical pep talk.
No.
He doesn't remind him of the perimeter or the R&R protocol.
He just grabs him, he wraps his arms around him and kisses him right there on the dark trail.
Wow.
Yeah, and the two of them retreat into Paul's well-built log cabin, which is heated by a carefully bamped wood stove to keep the crisp fall air out. And what follows is a deeply intimate, explicit physical and emotional release.
Right.
They share a bottle of rum with the label worn off. They strip down to their... and they finally let their guards down. And, it made me wonder, while reading this, does a strict camp leader lose his authority by giving in to this intense intimacy? Does it make him weak?
Actually, it is the exact opposite. Intimacy is the ultimate antidote to violence.
Okay.
And Joseph actually explicitly worries about this in the dream. He admits to Paul on the trail that he was terrified of making himself weak by starting a relationship.
Right.
He says he built a plan for him to forget the kids crying in the next room so he could coldly focus on perimeter security.
But Paul doesn't have that artisan. He feels the weight of the violence instantly.
Exactly. And biologically speaking, human beings cannot sustain that level of hypervigilance without a release valve. Cortisol and adrenaline will eventually just destroy you from the inside out.
That is so true.
So after dealing death in the front yard, Joseph and Paul had to reaffirm life. The physical intimacy in that cabin, the vulnerability of taking off your armor, sharing the warmth of the stove, drinking the rum, it is a biological grounding mechanism.
Because the tension had been building endlessly. I mean, the minivan breach, the dead bodies, interrogating the kids, worrying about the radio. By shedding all of that in the cabin, he remembers why they are operating the submarine in the first place.
Yes.
Paul says something really beautiful in the dream. He says the world has actually become simpler now.
And he's right. The old world is cluttered with laws, digital noise, superficial obligations.
Yeah.
The new world is brutally harsh, yes, but in the moment, in a warm cabin with entirely. Existence is profoundly simple. You share pain, you share fear, and
It's amazing. I mean, this dream is a masterpiece of duality. It perfectly balances the cold realities of natural selection with the absolute necessity of human warmth.
And the ultimate insight here is that hypervigilance, the numbered patrol stations, the R&R protocols, the generator mufflers, that isn't what actually keeps the group alive.
Right, those tactical measures just delay death.
Exactly. The radical intimacy, the vulnerability of sharing trauma by a wood stove, that is the mechanism that actually sustains life. His subconscious is sending a really clear message. You can build the perfect impenetrable fortress, but if you don't allow yourself to take off your armor once you are inside it, you've already lost.
That is so powerful. We all spend our waking lives building perimeters, managing risks, and deciding who gets past our own internal trust scales.
We do.
But there was one final detail Joseph mentioned toward the end of his notes that I want to leave you with. He noted the crisp air, the dew on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is going to be their group's very first winter together on property.
That is the ultimate test of the microsociety.
Right. Think about this. If a single random minivan breaking the perimeter at dusk caused this much emotional paranoia, what is going to happen to the psyche of these 10 people when they were entirely snowed in together for months?
That's a scary thought.
Trapped and relying on dwindling supplies with no external threats to unite them. Will the real danger be the undead or the scavengers outside the perimeter? Or will the true threat be the isolation creeping inside a cabin? It's definitely something to mull over next time you're checking your own perimeter.